A huncho thug is a huncho.
People always talk about what they won't do and what they will do.
Y'all, this beef just went from rap drama to real street consequences, and what Lil Woody just exposed about Boosie got the whole hip-hop world shook. We're talking about a dude who used to bump Boosie's music while sliding on ops, now calling out his childhood idol for the same thing he's getting criticized for, snitching. And Boosie just banned Woody from his whole city, saying he won't make it a day in Baton Rouge. But here's the crazy part, Woody ain't backing down, he's actually looking for Boosie now. Lil Woody was that young dude from Atlanta who grew up on Boosie's music. No cap. This wasn't just casual listening. Woody was out here getting influenced by that raw Baton Rouge energy, using Boosie's tracks as his soundtrack while he was allegedly doing hits for Young Thug's YSL crew. But the same music that motivated him to slide on ops is now the backdrop to the wildest beef in hip-hop, and it's getting deadly real. To understand how this whole situation spiraled out of control, we gotta go back to when Woody was YSL's alleged hitman before he became the star witness that brought down Young Thug's empire. This ain't just some random beef between two rappers. This is a collision between the old school street code and the new reality of federal prosecutions that's tearing the culture apart. Let's rewind to 2022 when the feds dropped that massive YSL Rico indictment that shook the entire Atlanta rap scene. This wasn't just another drug case. This was the government trying to prove that Young Thug's record label was actually a criminal organization responsible for murders, drug trafficking, and gang activity spanning over a decade. Lil Woody, real name Kenneth Copeland, wasn't just some random affiliate caught up in the sweep. This dude was allegedly Young Thug's go-to shooter, the trigger man who handled the crew's most serious business. The prosecution painted him as the enforcer who took out YFN Lucci's homeboy Peanut back in 2015. And that hit was supposedly ordered directly by Thug himself as part of an ongoing war between YSL and YFN. But here's where it gets crazy. While Woody was allegedly out here doing these hits, he was bumping Boosie's music as his motivation. That Louisiana gangsta rap was his energy source, his spiritual fuel. Songs like Set It Off and Wipe Me Down weren't just entertainment for Woody, they were his battle hymns. Boosie represented that real street code, that death before dishonor mentality that Woody thought he was living by. The federal indictment against YSL was 88 pages of alleged criminal activity, naming 28 defendants and painting a picture of a criminal enterprise that used rap music to fund and promote gang activity. Young Thug was facing RICO charges that could have put him away for life, and the government's case relied heavily on social media posts, lyrics, and witness testimony to prove their point. When the RICO case came down, Woody found himself facing multiple charges including murder, conspiracy, and racketeering. The feds had him dead to rights on several incidents, with evidence ranging from cell phone records to surveillance footage. They offered him a deal he couldn't refuse: become the star witness against Young Thug and the whole YSL crew, or spend the rest of his life behind bars. Woody took the deal, and his testimony became the backbone of the prosecution's case. For days, he sat on that witness stand telling the court about alleged murders, drug deals, and the inner workings of what the state claimed was a criminal organization. His words put Young Thug in a cage for over 2 years, and the hip-hop world watched as one of their biggest stars faced decades in prison. The testimony was detailed and damaging. Woody described specific incidents, named names, and provided the kind of insider information that only someone deep in the organization would know. He talked about how hits were ordered, how money was distributed, and how the crew operated on a day-to-day basis. It was the kind of cooperation that prosecutors dream about and defense attorneys have nightmares over. When Woody started talking, it sent shockwaves through the Atlanta rap scene and beyond. This wasn't just another street dude cooperating to save his own skin. This was someone who had been deeply embedded in one of hip-hop's most successful crews. Someone who knew where all the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. The hip-hop community's reaction was swift and harsh. Woody was labeled a snitch, a rat, someone who had violated the most sacred rule of street culture. Social media was flooded with criticism, and several prominent rappers spoke out against his cooperation. The consensus was clear: real street dudes don't talk, no matter what. But here's what made the situation even more complex. Woody wasn't just some random criminal who happened to rap. He was someone who had been influenced by rap music, specifically by artists like Boosie, who preached about that street code. The same culture that created him was now condemning him for breaking under pressure that most people couldn't imagine. When Boosie first heard about Woody's cooperation, he didn't hold back. This was the same Boosie who built his whole brand on that death before dishonor mentality, the dude who preached about never talking to police no matter what. Boosie had done serious time himself, facing murder charges and beating them without cooperating, so he felt like he had the moral authority to speak on the situation. Boosie went on multiple platforms calling Woody out for snitching, saying real street dudes don't cooperate with law enforcement under any circumstances. He was disgusted that someone who grew up listening to his music, someone who claimed to live by the code, would turn around and become a government witness. "You don't say nothing to the police," Boosie had said in previous interviews. That was his philosophy, his street commandment that he'd lived by throughout his own legal troubles. So when Woody started talking, Boosie saw it as the ultimate betrayal of everything he stood for. But Boosie's criticism went deeper than just the cooperation itself. He was offended that someone who had been influenced by his music, someone who had used his songs as motivation for alleged criminal activity, would then turn around and violate the very principles that those songs promoted. It was like watching your own child grow up to become everything you taught them not to be. The irony wasn't lost on anyone paying attention. Here was Boosie, whose music had allegedly inspired Woody to engage in the criminal activity that led to his cooperation, now criticizing him for that same cooperation. It was a complex web of influence, responsibility, and accountability that nobody wanted to untangle. But Woody wasn't about to take that criticism lying down, especially not from someone he used to look up to. And when he decided to fire back, he came with information that would change the entire dynamic of their relationship. This is where the beef got real personal, fam. Woody came with receipts, and what he revealed about Boosie had everybody's jaws on the floor. Instead of just defending his own actions, Woody went on the offensive, exposing what he claimed was Boosie's own history of cooperation with law enforcement. During his interview, Woody broke down exactly what happened when Boosie got pulled over with guns in his car. According to Woody, when the police found those weapons, Boosie immediately tried to pin them on his security guard, a convicted felon who couldn't legally possess firearms. When the police walked up on the car, Boo said that he secured the gun, Woody explained, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. Why is your security guard a convicted felon if you're a well-known, respected boss? Why you got a convicted felon as your security guard? But it gets deeper than that. Woody claimed that when the security guard wouldn't take the charge for the guns, Boosie started making threats right in front of the police. The same dude who preached about never cooperating with law enforcement was allegedly trying to pressure his own employee to take a gun case while the cops were watching. The police admitted that Boosie were making threats in front of them because security guard wouldn't admit to ownership of the weapon, Woody said, breaking down the whole situation with the kind of detail that suggested he had access to official documents or inside information. Woody wasn't done though. He kept going, explaining how this made Boosie a hypocrite of the highest order. The man who had built his entire brand on never talking to police had allegedly done exactly that when his own freedom was on the line. Telling is saying anything to the police that can involve someone else's freedom. That's what Boosie said about me. He should never spoke on me cause I break it down and people ain't got no choice but to respect the truth, which is Boosie started cooperating the moment the police said who gun this is. The most damaging part of Woody's revelation was about Boosie allegedly telling police about transporting guns across state lines. According to Woody, Boosie told law enforcement that, "We flew the guns from Atlanta to California in the suitcase." If true, that's way beyond just pointing out whose gun belongs to who. That's providing information about federal crimes that could have serious consequences for multiple people. Woody didn't just make vague accusations. He broke down the entire incident with specific details that painted a picture of someone who panicked under pressure and immediately started cooperating with law enforcement. According to Woody's account, when the police pulled Boosie over and found the guns, his first instinct wasn't to remain silent, it was to start pointing fingers. The security guard situation was particularly damaging to Boosie's reputation. Woody pointed out the logical inconsistencies in having a convicted felon as security while carrying weapons, and how Boosie's immediate response was to try to shift responsibility rather than take the charges himself. The security guard wasn't his security guard, Woody claimed. Y'all trying to find a way to keep his image clean. Boo real street. Boo was my idol. When I was a kid, I looked up to Boo. I wanted everything he had. I wanted to be like Boosie. This personal element made Woody's accusations even more powerful. He wasn't just some random person trying to tear down Boosie's reputation. He was a former fan, someone who had genuinely looked up to Boosie and been influenced by his music and his message. The disappointment in his voice was real when he talked about discovering what he claimed was his idol's hypocrisy. Woody wasn't just defending himself. He was going on the offensive, calling out what he saw as Boosie's complete hypocrisy. Here was a dude who built his whole image on never cooperating with police, but allegedly did exactly that when his own freedom was on the line. The difference between me and Boo? Woody explained. Boo got a reputation for whatever it is. I got a reputation for what? When pressed about what would happen in a similar situation, Woody made it clear he understood the street code better than Boosie gave him credit for. He talked about how if someone threw a bag with a gun in his car, he'd be fighting them before the police even got involved. If me and you riding in the car together and you throw a bag in the back seat, they got a weapon. When the police come in the car, they're gonna be pulling me off you. You're gonna be beating your ass. But the most powerful part of Woody's argument was when he pointed out that he actually took a gun charge without snitching, while Boosie allegedly tried to pass his charges off to someone else. When you watch my interrogation, I was in the interrogation room because the police had found a weapon in the car that I was in. I didn't tell the police who that weapon belongs to. I told them to let my buddy go. I went to jail for that gun. I went to jail for it. Nobody ain't take ownership of it. This was Woody's trump card, the claim that he had actually lived by the street code in at least one situation, while Boosie had violated it in his. It was a direct challenge to everything Boosie represented, and it came with the kind of specific details that were hard to dismiss. What made Woody's revelations even more impactful was how he presented them. This wasn't some emotional rant or desperate attempt to deflect criticism. Woody was calm, articulate, and methodical in his breakdown of what he claimed was Boosie's hypocrisy. Boosie made it clear that Lil Woody was not welcome in Baton Rouge, and if he showed up, he wouldn't make it out alive. But it wasn't just Boosie making the threats. He was talking about how the whole city would be gunning for Woody. He wouldn't have lasted 3 weeks in Baton Rouge. He wouldn't have lasted probably a week in Baton Rouge, Boosie said, making his position crystal clear. But Boosie took it even further, explaining the street politics that would make Woody a target in Louisiana. This wasn't just about their personal beef. This was about how Woody's reputation as a cooperator would make him a target for anyone looking to make their name. The most chilling part of Boosie's threat was when he explained how easy it would be to get away with it. In his mind, Woody had made so many enemies through his cooperation that anyone could take him out and the blame would automatically go to Young Thug's people. The street politics that Boosie described are real and deadly. In cities like Baton Rouge, reputation is everything, and taking out someone who's seen as a high-profile snitch can elevate a crew's status instantly. It's not just about personal beef. It's about sending a message to the entire community about what happens to people who cooperate with law enforcement. But here's what makes this situation even more dangerous. Woody isn't backing down. Instead of staying away from Louisiana and keeping a low profile, sources say he's actually been asking around about Boosie's whereabouts, trying to confront his former idol face to face. The irony is thick as hell, gang. The same dude who used to get hyped listening to Boosie's music while allegedly sliding on ops is now potentially sliding on Boosie himself. The student versus the teacher, but both of them got exposed for the same thing they're beefing about. What's really wild about this whole situation is how Lil Woody has transformed from YSL's alleged hitman to a dude who's comfortable calling out anybody, including his former idols. The same person who was allegedly sliding on ops while bumping Boosie's music is now exposing Boosie for the same type of behavior he's being criticized for. Woody's interview style shows he's not just some street dude who got caught up. He's articulate, he comes with receipts, and he's not intimidated by anyone's reputation. When he breaks down the hypocrisy in Boosie's position, he does it with facts and specific details that are hard to dispute. That's a direct shot at not just Boosie, but at the whole culture of selective outrage when it comes to cooperation with law enforcement. Woody has positioned himself as someone who's willing to call out hypocrisy wherever he sees it, regardless of who's involved or what the consequences might be. The fact that he's not hiding from Boosie's threats and is actually looking to confront him directly shows a level of fearlessness that's both admirable and dangerous. In a culture where backing down from threats can destroy your reputation, Woody has chosen to double down on his position. This beef has exposed something deeper about the street code that both rappers claim to live by. The reality is that when real pressure comes, when life sentences are on the table, that code gets tested in ways that most people can't imagine. Woody's cooperation in the YSL case was extensive and well documented. He provided testimony that helped convict multiple people and kept Young Thug locked up for over 2 years. That's undeniable cooperation with law enforcement that violated every principle of the street code. But his allegations about Boosie show that cooperation comes in different forms. According to Woody, when Boosie got caught with guns, he immediately tried to shift responsibility to his security guard and allegedly provided information about transporting weapons across state lines. The question becomes, is there really a difference between cooperating to avoid a life sentence and cooperating to avoid a gun charge? Both involve providing information to law enforcement that could affect someone else's freedom. This beef has forced the hip-hop community to confront some uncomfortable truths about the street code and how it applies in real-world situations. The reality is that most people, when faced with serious prison time, will do whatever it takes to minimize their exposure. The street code sounds good in rap songs, but it's much harder to live by when federal prosecutors are threatening you with life in prison. One of the most interesting aspects of this beef is how it's played out in the media. Woody has been strategic about using interviews and social media to get his message out, while Boosie has relied more on his established platform and reputation to make his threats. The fact that Woody has been able to get paid interviews and appearances shows that there's a market for his perspective. As he said in one interview, Woody took cooperating and turned it into an actual career. He's monetizing his notoriety in a way that's both smart and controversial. As of right now, this beef is at a dangerous crossroads. Boosie has essentially banned Woody from an entire city, with multiple crews potentially looking to make their name by taking him out. But Woody isn't hiding. He's actively looking for Boosie, ready to confront the situation head-on. Woody has already proven he's not afraid to speak his mind, even when it puts him in danger. His willingness to expose Boosie's alleged hypocrisy shows he's not backing down from anyone, regardless of their reputation or influence. Meanwhile, Boosie's threats about Baton Rouge show he's serious about making Woody pay for the disrespect. When someone with Boosie's influence in Louisiana says you're not welcome, that's not just tough talk. That's a real warning about what could happen. The situation has reached the point where both men have too much invested to back down. Woody has already exposed what he claims is Boosie's hypocrisy, and Boosie has already made threats that he can't take back without looking weak. For Woody, backing down now would validate everything Boosie said about him being a coward who only talks tough when he's protected. For Boosie, not following through on his threats would make him look like he's all talk when it comes to defending his reputation. This beef between Lil Woody and Boosie represents everything that's wrong with the culture of selective outrage in hip-hop. Both men have allegedly cooperated with law enforcement when their own freedom was on the line, but they're ready to destroy each other over who's the bigger snitch. The reality is that Woody grew up idolizing Boosie, using his music as motivation for alleged criminal activity, believing in the code that Boosie preached. But when both of them faced real consequences, that code went out the window. Now they're locked in a deadly beef that could end with real violence, all over who's the bigger hypocrite. Woody is actively looking for Boosie, ready to confront his former idol, while Boosie has essentially put a bounty on Woody's head in Baton Rouge. The saddest part is that this whole situation could have been avoided if both men had just acknowledged that the street code is unrealistic when life sentences are on the table. Instead, they're both willing to risk their lives defending reputations built on a code they've both allegedly broken. This beef ain't over, fam. With Woody looking for Boosie and Boosie's threats about what would happen in Baton Rouge, we're watching a situation that could turn deadly at any moment. The student versus the teacher, the idol versus the fan, both fighting over a code that neither one of them actually lived by when it mattered most. That's the real tragedy of this whole situation. Two men who could have learned from each other's mistakes are instead ready to destroy each other over those same mistakes. And in the end, the only winners will be the people who profit from the violence and drama, while the culture loses two more voices to a beef that didn't have to happen. The hip-hop community needs to take a long look at itself and ask whether this is really the direction we want to go. When former fans and idols are ready to kill each other over who's the bigger hypocrite, something is seriously wrong with the culture. Until we address these deeper issues, we're going to keep seeing beefs like this escalate into real violence, and that's something nobody should want.